customer base and its geographic or demographics are different, and that what's important to one segment of that customer base may not be important to another segment. And you know what? The exact same thing applies to employment brand. Exactly the same thing. So, what's important to a, engineer that we're trying to hire in Hyderabad who's, worked, 6 or 7 years out in the IT industry is going to be very different from what's important to an MBA coming out of Stanford that, we're competing with, against other top companies. And so you have to have, you do have to have sort of this notion of an overall umbrella, which is, okay, so for Microsoft, what are we about as a company? And it's a challenge to get those principles to be general, yet unique enough and relevant. I will acknowledge that, but you can do it. But within that umbrella, it's also really important to understand, well, what are the unique needs and characteristics of these different segments of your candidate population? Industry, college recruiting, you name it. It could be from one function to another, technical recruiting versus marketers versus sales. They look for different things and then sort of understand how that candidate value proposition shows up for them. My personal opinion is that I have 3 children. I have 2 that are in high school, so I test a lot of stuff against them because they'll be college students soon. And what I can tell you is, boy, they can smell it if you're not telling the truth 100 miles away. And the more you are transparent and genuine and candid about here's what's up with our company and here's what we're doing and here's the good and the bad, and at the same time aspirational. Yeah, here's the stuff we don't do well, but here's where we want to go, the better off you'll be. And the better off you'll be, I think I heard a term from one of the senior leaders at TMP, which is a company that does a lot of this employment brand work, and they were talking about brand consistency. So what they were saying is that if the experience of people is inconsistent with what they think coming in, you're going to see it in attrition. So you're going to see people come in and not have the experience that they thought, not feel that good about it, and that it is really important to be able to share what you are about as a company. As an example, this is one flavor of our new campaign on campus. Options are good. One of the things that we learned from our research is that people coming to Microsoft really value the fact that we are a very diverse company, and that we got lots of different businesses, and that we're in all different parts of the world, and you could work on different things, and you could come and have a career there, because you get to do all of these different things, and you can do it in one place. This treatment, this is just a perfect example of what we're like. We're kind of quirky, and we like to have fun, and we like to be clever, and it has done extremely well so far this season on campus. But it's important for us to be able to, in the right way, sort of share who we are. All right, I want to go back. The last part about candidate value proposition is this notion of internal and external investment. This is also something I did not understand until I got into recruiting. So, external investment is the, options are good and all the things you do to go out and market your brand. I have a blog internally, and I get lots of feedback on it. And one of the things that I heard loud and clear in my first 3 months on the job is it was sort of said to me in this way, which is, we know Google better than we know Microsoft. So, recruiters know Google better than they know Microsoft. What does that mean? Well, what that means is that we're a big, complex company, and that they're not experts on our company. And that we're also sort of, very interested in what our competitor is doing, and Google's a big competitor for talent with us, and so we want to know where are they and what they're doing. But the reality is that recruiting has to be as informed about what the company is doing as any place. And that we should be the experts on Microsoft because we're going out and selling it. We're going out and talking about it. And it requires an investment. So for us, we have a plan to invest in the ongoing education and training and information sharing with recruiters about our own company. because it just doesn't happen for us. It just won't happen naturally, and there isn't some great internal website where you can go and just be educated in the right way. So exactly what that looks like, I don't know, but it is a very important aspect of being able to tell your story is the people that tell it, they got to be experts. And as a leading indicator, I'll know when that happens. When people out in the business, and they're having a conversation, say, I don't know, what's going on in with that new Zune release, or new little iPod competitor? What's up with that in another business? Say, oh, you know what? Go ask your recruiter. They'll know. Go ask them because they're educated on the business. And so, you have to get the right balance of, well, how much do you know about your business versus how much do you know about the rest of Microsoft business? You got to get that right. But I do believe that making the investment internally and externally is the way that you get the bang for your buck on all the hard work that you do in establishing that candidate value proposition. Okay, that's great. Still with me?
Yep.
Okay. A little hot here. Want to do the dog thing again? Okay. By the way, we did have one treatment that our legal department pulled. I was thinking of showing it to you, but I decided not to. Okay. So this is I would say of all the things I'm going to talk about, this is the thing that is most underinvested in as a company, and for some companies, maybe us, has one of the biggest long-term potentials. And it is know the market. So, how many of you have a workforce planning process in some way? Raise your hand. Right? Workforce planning? Okay, again, if you don't, it's something you might want to consider. So workforce planning for us it's one side of the coin so far. And the side of the coin that we focus on is demand. How many would you like? How many are you going to hire? What flavor are those? How many are developers? How many marketing? How many sales? How many in this country versus this country? How many at this level? And so it's an exercise that is, in some ways, has a financial basis, right? Because you want to know, how am I going to grow the business, and what is that investment going to look like? And that kind of feeds into a P&L. It feeds into your financial commitment for the year, because of the cost associated with it. There is another side of the coin that is as important. And it's extraordinary to me that in our industry, it's so ironic, I'm in an industry where talent is everything. And we live or die based on our talent. And yet, we have not had a systematic view into the talent supply in the market. So there's the demand side, how many do you want? And I think we've just sort of gone along with this notion that, yeah, supply is unconstrained. Just go out there and hire them. Yep, go find them. Add more recruiters, I'm sure they're there, just go get them. And that's not true. That's not reality, especially as you're a company of a certain size, or if you're in a specific niche of an industry or something. That actually is not true. And understanding the supply side and connecting it with the demand side is a really important way to think about long-term talent acquisition. So, what we've done is we've started, this is a process that has begun. I would say we're in the first phase of making the investment. But the place to start is, okay, well, what markets are you interested in? Right? So what do you care about? And for us, where we started was, well, I want to understand, well, what's the software developer market look like in the US and in India and China? Really important places. That's not the end game. That's not a comprehensive view of software development around the world. Nor is it a comprehensive view of all the talent we need. Half of our company is sales and marketing. We need to be able to sort of understand what the supply is, but at least it's a starting point. And so we said, okay, well, let's do this research. Let's just, this is part of our mid-year review, and it's just the same discussion with Steve, but I told you that I shared the notion of, well, it may not be the quality of hire, it's the opportunity cost of the are we hiring for the right job? And we had this discussion about talent supply. He said, you know what, Scott, that is right. Our business leaders don't understand that we are constrained. So we have to show them. You got to show them the data, because they won't believe it if you just tell them. You have to show them the data. So we started to do this research. We identified these countries, and we just go out and I have a team of 3 people, and they're going to look at it as they have a day job, but they'll take 10% of their time and try to figure out what that looks like. That was an incredibly it difficult thing to do. Way harder than I thought it was going to be. And it is hard for a number of reasons. One is that there is no source of data. There's no one source to go to look. And I'm guessing that it's similar to other industries, but there are 30 sources of data. And so in a sort of consulting-like way, you sort of have to approach it and say, okay, well, I'm going to collect the ones that are relevant, and I'm going to triangulate. And the other thing that you quickly learn is that not only are there 30 sources of data, they're all biased, every single one of them. So, I'll give you an example. The Chinese government will tell us that there are 700,000 engineers graduating from universities in China every year. That may be true. Some of them will work on your car. So they don't necessarily define it in exactly the same way that we do. And the educational requirements and what they learn is very different from the way that our educational system works and that it does in other parts of the world. So I'm not saying it's inaccurate. I'm just saying that there is inherent stakeholder bias in that data. And you have to understand that. It's not that I'm going to throw that out, but I need to understand the context of the information that I'm looking at. The next thing we did is we said, okay, well, we want to look at college talent and we want to look at industry talent. And that there really is no methodology to sort of take the data and then do something with it. And so we developed this notion, this kind of funnel notion. And as you know, recruiting is a funnel. You start big and you sort of get down to the candidates that you're interested in, and then you make an offer, and then there's a certain kind of yield that you get from recruiting. You can look at talent that you don't have in the market the exact same way. So you can start and say, okay, I'm going to start big. I'm going to start with the number that is all engineers graduated from in China, and what I'm going to do then is I'm going to apply filters to that. And I'm going to, and it could be occupation, experience. We had technical filters that we applied to it to look at specific technical skill sets. And then we got down to this number that we said it was QFI. And QFI for us is qualified for interview. And you know what? The qualified for interview number was pretty different from the first number that we started with. It was a very small percent. In some countries, it could be 10% of the original number. In some countries, less. And then you can say, okay, well, if that is qualified for interview, if we apply just the hit rate that we have today to that, here's how many people we could hire. Pretty interesting. And so looking at the market and saying, okay, well, here's my starting point, but I'm going to apply this methodology and I'm going to get down to a number that says this is really the talent that is capable of working in my business today is an important thing to do. Talent share. So what we did after that was we said, okay, well, now we know what we think the overall market is. So just with a little hard work, we were able to figure out how many employees we actually have in these countries. And you can then take that and say, okay, well, if this is the number that I actually have that are doing the job, and this is the number of total people that are capable of doing the job, I have my share of talent. And so I have 3% of the market, or I have 10% of the market. And that could be, again, it could be on the industry side, and it could be on the college side. That is a really interesting data point to have. And it is, we talk about share of market all the time. So what's your share of your market, products and services? But think about applying a share of market concept to talent acquisition. What share of market do you have? What share of college talent do you have? And then you can kind of look across countries and say, well, we got 8% share here. We have 2% share here. Looks like there may be maybe it's a place where we could look because we obviously are capable as a company of getting a bigger share of that talent. I wonder what we're doing differently. Or I wonder if that investment's enough. Or I wonder if we're over-investing in the place where we've got already sort of critical mass and as much share as we're going to get. It's a really interesting concept to think about relative to sort of long-term, what are your investments, what do they look like? The other thing that we tried to do, and this is probably the hardest part of this, was we try to project the talent pools going forward. So it's not just a static thing, right? You don't want to just know, oh, what does that qualified for higher market look like today? What you want to know is, what's it going to look like in 3 years? What's it going to look like in 5 years? And again, there's lots of data, and there's tons of stakeholder bias in that data, but you can put together a picture and sort of run scenarios and say, okay, well, I think the market looks like this today, and it's going to grow X%, and it's going to be this big, in 5 years and 7 years. And then you start to think about, okay, well, what are competitors doing in that market, and should we be doing something differently than we're doing today? My advice, after having sort of gone through this, is that we made a mistake, I think, by looking too short term. And by short term, I mean like 3 years. So it was hard enough to just project out 3 years. When I got to discussions with our senior leadership team, including a little email exchange with Bill Gates, they're thinking about 10 years from now. And really, we should start there and have a point of view on, well, what are these talent supplies going to look like in 5 or 10 years? And yeah, it becomes more uncertain, and there's more, sort of variability in your ability to estimate it. But it is important. If anybody's going to have a view of what talent supply is going to look like in 5 or 10 years, it should be us. We should be the ones doing it. We should be the ones sharing that information, giving a sort of sense for what we think is going on, and then facilitating those discussions with senior leaders. As an example, so one of the things that we know, a lot of people know here, if you're interested in computer science grads, is that the enrollment, this is just an example of sort of the way that the research helped us. We know that computer science enrollment in the US is down 30%, or 30 or 35% over the last 3 or 4 years. So that's people that enroll in computer science curriculum in college. So you know that if enrollment is down, guess what's coming? Graduation's coming down. Right? So the people that are going to come out of those programs and be available for hire in 3 or 4 years, it's going to be way smaller than it was. Not only that, but we have these issues, as those that look at talent from outside the United States know, and that is a very volatile landscape. And you also have countries that are where the opportunities for great jobs are, better today than they've ever been. And you know what? They know it. And you know what they're doing? They're telling their people, hey, first of all, you don't have to go to the United States to get a great education. Stay here and work. Or if you do, go ahead and then come back. Because you can have a great job here just like you can in Silicon Valley or New York or Seattle, and we'd be happy to have you back, and they're promoting that. So it is, so my point with this example is, there is the research and analysis and the sort of longer-term thinking and those discussions, but there's also the realities that you can see from that data that they are happening now. And our job is to figure out what is our response to that. What should we be doing short-term, medium, long-term, and not just let it happen. Last thing, impact of talent acquisition on your overall business. So it is not just a recruiting thing. I mean, that's what you find out. One of the things that you see is that talent pools. There's a geographic flavor to that. So where is the talent in the world? And that by looking at that, you might make some very different decisions on where should you be investing in the world. Where should you have people? And that can change the whole sort of character of a company. We are a company that has a very unique profile, which is of our 72,000 employees, I think 25,000 or so work in Seattle. So I don't know too many, I don't know if there's any other company that has that same geographic profile where you have such a high percent of people working in one place, which I think a lot of technical leaders would say that could be a good thing. You have a lot of collaboration with technical teams, and there's a lot of interdependencies. But when you look at the realities of talent supply in the market, that might not be where we want to be 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And it's just a great, that source of data is a terrific discussion starter when you get to things like that. Okay. Last thing, know the business. So you would think that business acumen and any discussion of business acumen would have been on the first page. Like, it's just fundamental. It's like systems and tools and leadership commitment. How come you didn't put it on there? And I could have. But I chose not to because I think that despite all the investment in the discussion, we're not doing it. I'll just be honest. I don't think we're investing it. For some reason, we're not investing it in the right way. And I won't take a lot of time here. There was this survey of HR professionals. This was in the infamous Fast Company article. You see that one on the cover? a little while ago, Why We Hate HR. It's a really interesting article. What they said was, well, where do you need to be trained? What do you want to learn about? And this is what it came back with. And you see, 83% interpersonal communications, whatever. Strategic change management, 32%. Okay, that's good. Finance, basic finance and accounting, 2%. It's like, well, why is that? Why is there this disconnect between what we say we want to do and what we're doing? And two things, two hypotheses. So one is, there's a difference between business acumen and business knowledge. And we mix the two up. And business knowledge is, I've been working in a business long enough, I know how it works. I mean, once you're in a business and you're working in it, you almost can't help but learn about it. And if you're curious and sort of interested in what's happening, you will become, in some ways, an expert on parts of that business. That's different from business acumen, because what you're learning is you're learning about that business, and a lot of that knowledge does not translate. So you go to another business, you can't apply it, because it's not sort of foundational business acumen. What it is I understand how that business works. And that is really important, but it is most impactful when it's on this base of business acumen. The other reason I think there is a disconnect is because we don't see how to apply it. It's sort of like, yeah, I'm going to learn the business over here, and then I'm going to do my job over here. And those two things won't connect. It's like, and to say, yeah, well, we're going to grow 8% this year, or our margins are this, or here's how we think about our economic model, that's all important. But the real sort of sweet spot is when you can connect it to the work that you're doing. So let me give you an example. So when I was back running HR for MSN, we lost our head of sales and marketing. We had to hire somebody, right? So, we were looking at all of our leadership competencies. What do we want? We want somebody that has market insight and all this stuff. And every month there is a update of our financial performance that comes out. And as a leader, I'm on the distribution list and I get this. And I'm looking at it and I see that, our revenue is up. We're way over what we thought our budget, our plan for the year. But it's not up everywhere. So in the US, we're kind of on budget, but outside of the US, we are blowing away our numbers. Not only are we blowing away our numbers, but the percent of our revenue that's coming from international is way up. And it's this big number. And if you kind of project out, you can see, at some point in time in the near future, we're going to do more business outside the United States than we're doing inside the United States. So we're thinking about this, right? So we have to hire a head of sales and marketing. Why is that important? Why is that important? What's that?
I want to make sure they know international business.
Yeah! I'm hiring a head of sales and marketing for a business that's going global. I can see it. I can see the data. I know that we are absolutely blowing away our plans outside the United States, and that we are on path to be more of a global business than we are a US business. And so when we have a discussion around, well, what are the characteristics and what the quality and skill set of the leaders and their experiences that I'm looking for, we should absolutely be looking at who's got global experience. And that may not be the thing that makes a decision, but boy, that should be part of it. And who should bring that up? We should. That should come from us. And so the discussion around, well, what kind of leader should we hire with the staffing leader? In this case, it was a partnership between the staffing leader and the HR generalist. That's the way that you take knowledge of the business. It's not just I can read the P&L or I get it, but I'm actually linking it to the things that I'm doing day to day in my job. And I can tell you that I run this class at Microsoft called P&L Unplugged, where I teach HR people about how to read their P&L, but that is only the starting point, and that the sweet spot is being able to connect it to them to what are the decisions you make and how are you doing your job every day. And that's where the power of the business acumen combines with business knowledge, and you sort of link it up, and it does become actually relevant and impactful. And I do think that the last point on here is that it's something that you absolutely can hire and develop for. And when we go out and hire HR folks off campus, it's one of the things that we look for. We sort of ask them, just their sense for how businesses work and what their appetite and curiosity is for it. And I've also seen people, there are lots of examples of people at Microsoft that they have the business knowledge piece. All you had to do was invest in the development and have them go through it. and then with the connection to their day-to-day job, and all of a sudden they were able to contribute in a different way. Okay, we're almost out of time. Here's how I think we're doing. I can't help but give us a grade. So what I'll say about this is that the grades are less relevant. We are a very self-critical organization at Microsoft, so we might be better than I'm putting up there, but I can't help it. What's important is that you understand, well, what are the aspects of recruiting to win? What does our scorecard look like? And then two things. One is be incredibly honest with yourself about where you are. And don't let the data fool you, and use it sort of in the right way, and at the same time aspirational on where you're going. And I've said that before. But if I could sort of underlie all of this recruiting to win stuff with only one thing, if I could only give my recruiting organization, 600 people around the world, one thing, I would give them confidence. I would give them confidence to know that they're adding unique value to the business, and that is what lets people do great work. So, that's it. That's what our job is. It's a pretty fun job. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the audience?